Welcome to the PlantMichiganGreen.com Gardening Show. Presented by the Michigan Nursery and Landscape Association. Now here's your Garden Show host, Dr. Bob Schutzke.
Hello everybody. Tune in every Saturday at 4 p.m. through August. We will share garden insights, feature guests from Michigan's green industry, and answer your questions submitted through PlantMichiganGreen.com Ask the Expert. Our hope is to make the most of your outdoor living experience. During the week, you can log on to PlantMichiganGreen.com, your landscaping and horticulture resource, to pose gardening questions, find a professional horticulturist, locate a retail garden center in your area, or become aware of the rewarding careers in Michigan's green industry. We will spend today's show with Stacey Hirvela from the marketing department at Spring Meadow Nursery in Grand Haven, Michigan. Spring Meadow Nursery is one of the leading producers and introducers of shrubs to the marketplace. She will be with us after a short break, so stick around and get into the gardening groove on the PlantMichiganGreen.com Gardening Show on Newstalk 760 WJR. Welcome back. We're pleased to have Stacey Hirvela from the marketing department at Spring Meadow Nursery to talk about hydrangeas and other interesting shrubs from Spring Meadow Nursery. Hi, Stacey.
Hi, Bob.
Thanks for being with us today on the PlantMichiganGreen.com Gardening Show.
Well, it's my pleasure. I always love talking plants, especially in my hometown of Detroit.
Yeah, that's great. And there's a lot to talk about when it comes to plants in Spring Meadow Nursery. Can you start our conversation today with some background on Spring Meadow?
Sure. A lot of people don't know Spring Meadow specifically, even though we're a Michigan company. They know us better by the brand that they see in their garden centers, which is the Proven Winners Color Choice Shrubs brand. So Spring Meadow Nursery was started in 1981 by Dale and Liz Deppie, who still run the nursery and are here every day today. And we started as a liner nursery. So basically what that means is that we started with little tiny starter plants that we sold to growers across the country. And, business was going really, really well. But in the 90s, they started realizing that to really differentiate our business, they were going to need to find some unique new varieties of shrubs to introduce to the market. And at the time, there wasn't really a lot of ornamental plant breeding happening in the U.S. A lot of it was happening in Europe. So my boss, Tim Wood, and Dale Deppie went to the Netherlands, and they brought back two plants that kind of changed the entire market. And those two plants were Wine and Roses Weigela and Limelight Hydrangea. So those two plants, a lot of people don't realize it, but actually had their start in the U.S. right here in West Michigan from Spring Meadow. And we had so much success bringing those back. We introduced those under the Color Choice brand, which was our own brand. And that model of, bringing really beautiful and interesting plants and introducing them to the market worked out so well that in 2004, we joined with the Proven Winners brand to become Proven Winners Color Choice Shrubs. So now here in 2021, we have almost 350 proprietary, unique flowering shrub and evergreen varieties in our line that are distributed all over the U.S. and Canada, and in fact, actually all over the world. We have an extensive distribution network in Europe and are working on Australia and South Africa and beyond. So, from that little humble beginning in 1981, we've grown an awful lot. We are a wholesale-only nursery, so unfortunately we're not open to the public. A lot of people, especially now if you're out here in Grand Haven, see our facility and think, oh, wow, that must be a garden center. Unfortunately, we are closed to the public, but you can always find our plants at your local garden center. They're sold just about everywhere.
Isn't Limelight Hydrangea the most popular hydrangea in the world?
It very well may be. It's an interesting plant because it really transformed the way that people think about Panicle Hydrangeas. So much to the point that people call all sorts of Panicle Hydrangeas, which used to be called PG hydrangeas, now they just call them Limelight Hydrangeas. So whether or not they're specifically the Limelight variety or just a general Panicle Hydrangea, people will say, oh no, that's a Limelight Hydrangea or that's a Limelight type hydrangea. So it's really come to represent this entire species of hydrangea. And, they're just so easy to grow. They grow just about everywhere. Everyone in Michigan can grow them easily, but they grow well from, the northernmost regions all the way down to Orlando.
Yeah, in the back in the old days, PG was the most popular hydrangea, and it seemed like when Limelight came along, it replaced it as like you say, as being the one go-to hydrangea that people tend to love.
Well, PG is a really interesting plant. So a lot of people don't realize they might be familiar with the term PG hydrangea, which is really just a type of panicle hydrangea, but it stands for Hydrangea paniculata grandiflora. And this is a variety of hydrangea that actually dates back to, I think, the 1860s in France. It was one of the very first selections of a panicle hydrangea to make it on the market. And it was a fabulous plant and a very interesting plant. But, as so often happens as time goes on, a lot of developments were made so that subsequent introductions from the original PG had stronger stems, so they didn't flop all over. Subsequent introductions also developed much better color as the season went on. So we kind of went away from this plant that at one time represented, the vanguard of what was possible with panicle hydrangeas to things like Limelight, to now things like our new improved Limelight Prime, which is an even better version of Limelight, more compact, stronger stems, bigger flowers, and fantastic color. And that plant just hit the market for the first time this season. And when I was shopping in the Detroit area this spring, it was selling like hotcakes.
Oh, great, great. So when it comes to plants coming from Spring Meadow, could you give us a little bit of background on how you deal with breeders around the world?
Yeah, so we have an internal breeding program in-house here at Spring Meadow that our breeders are working on new varieties for the Proven Winners Color Choice Shrubs program. But we do work with breeders around the world. So I mentioned the Netherlands, and the Netherlands remains to this day a hot spot of ornamental plant breeding. But we have worked with breeders in Korea, in Japan, in Serbia. We have some plants from Australia, really just about all over the temperate world. We've worked with various breeders, and we work with a ton of breeders in the U.S. as well. In fact, a number of our plants were actually developed at North Carolina State University. We have a great relationship with the head of their plant genetics department and breeding, Dr. Tom Rainey, and he's the one who's introduced some great new colorful smooth hydrangeas. So this is like a native hydrangea, like an Annabelle type hydrangea, but with a pink color. So like Invincible Spirit, Invincible Ruby, Invincible Mini Mauvette, and those all came out of North Carolina. So, it really gives us the opportunity to work with people who have varying interests, varying skill levels, and really different goals in their breeding so that we can offer in the Proven Winners Color Choice line a complete selection of products for every taste, every style, every climate, etc.
Yeah, Tom Rainey and I go way back, and he's an excellent plantsman, and so it was really interesting, and we're benefiting from his work on breeding because he does an excellent job.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, because when we talk about Tom Rainey, a lot of people don't really think of plants as an innovative field, right? They don't think that the innovation happens. And Tom is a great example of a plant breeder who's truly innovative. He's a plant scientist who really looks hard at, how can he use technology to solve problems in the world, whether that's, invasiveness or compactness or new colors. And he's just really a visionary and talented plant breeder. So we're so happy we can work with him.
Yeah, I was pleased to see that he was working on barberries and has come up with some sterile and non-invasive barberries.
Yeah, that's correct. We offer two of them, Sunjoy Mini Maroon and Sunjoy Toto. So, yeah, especially I think if listeners do a lot of hiking, they start to go out in the woods and they might see the same, barberries that they're seeing around their neighborhood in the middle of the woods. And, it would be normal to think like, oh, wow, I didn't realize barberry is native to Michigan. Unfortunately, that's not a native barberry. Those are invasive barberries because birds eat the seeds. So, to have Dr. Rainey working on, resolving the invasiveness issue on barberry so that people who, want to continue to have that low maintenance color, people who have deer issues and have limited options because barberry is, of course, notoriously deer resistant. His vision and work really helps to provide, game-changing plants so that people can still get what they love without, the issues of invasiveness or spreading out into the wild.
Right. Stacey, we need to take a short break right now, so just wait a minute, and then when we come back, we'll talk more plants. So stay tuned for more with Stacey Hirvela from Spring Meadow Nursery and the PlantMichiganGreen.com Gardening Show on News Talk 760 WJR.
Welcome back to more of the PlantMichiganGreen.com Gardening Show with your host, Dr. Bob Schutzke.
Welcome back. We're here with Stacey Hirvela from Spring Meadow Nursery in Grand Haven, Michigan. So Stacey gave us an overview of Spring Meadow. So Stacey, let's talk plants now. So what can you tell us about hydrangeas and the other interesting shrubs that you have at Spring Meadow?
Well, I want to start with hydrangeas because as anybody who has stuck their head outside the door has seen lately, it is hydrangea season. And here in Grand Haven, hydrangeas of all sorts are looking fantastic. And, we were talking about Limelight Hydrangea, and that's really what kind of kicked us off on the hydrangea path. And now Proven Winners Color Choice Shrubs really is known throughout the country for hydrangeas. And with that comes, sort of a responsibility for someone like me in the marketing department to really help people to understand how to grow and be successful with hydrangeas. So I want to briefly just talk about hydrangeas and talk about the different types. So, when we're trying to explain the difference, there are actually 6 different types or species of hydrangeas that people grow in their gardens. People hear hydrangeas, probably for most of them, what comes to mind is those big pink, purple, blue ones that are blooming everywhere now. And that is one type of hydrangea. That's a Hydrangea macrophylla. But there's other types too. There's mountain hydrangeas, Hydrangea serrata, which is similar to the big leaf or Hydrangea macrophylla, but a little bit hardier. And then you have climbing hydrangeas, which we don't have in the Proven Winners Color Choice line just yet, but a lot of people are familiar with them. They're a very useful garden plants. And then we have, the oak leaf hydrangeas, which are my personal favorites. Those are also native to North America. They're not quite native to Michigan, but I love oak leaf hydrangeas because I think of them as the true 4-season hydrangea. Most hydrangeas, as much as I love them, to be honest, winter is just not their strong suit. Whereas with the oak leaf hydrangeas, they just, especially as they mature, they develop this beautiful cinnamon-colored peeling bark that just makes a really dramatic presentation in the winter. They also, compared to all other hydrangeas, have fantastic fall color, beautiful summer flowers, and really unique oak-shaped leaves. So we have the Gatsby series of oak leaf hydrangeas that you'll find at your local garden center. My personal favorite is Gatsby Pink because as those flowers fade or age through the summer, they take on a really nice pink color. So I highly recommend oak leaf hydrangeas. But, we were talking about panicle hydrangeas like Limelight. I love those too. And smooth hydrangeas like Annabelle, Incredible, Invincible Spirit too. And so, when it comes to shopping for hydrangeas, I think a lot of people, they go to their garden center, they think, okay, I want a hydrangea, and then they get there and they see all these different types, and it can be very confusing. So I wanted to just kind of narrow it down to a few simple recommendations. So if you feel like you are not very confident in your gardening skills, or you're looking for a really, really low maintenance plant, then I'm going to suggest that you go with Panicle Hydrangeas. So this is the type like Limelight or Firelight or Limelight Prime. Firelight Tidbit is another one you'll see at your local garden centers there. Or the smooth hydrangea, so the Annabelle, Incredible, Invincible Spirit types. Now, these type bloom on new wood, and I know we're limited on time, so I'm not going to go too far into that, but basically what that means is that if they get damaged by winter weather, if they get pruned at, any time from winter to spring, it's not going to impact the flowering. So they really have sort of more of this foolproof kind of characteristic naturally in their genetics. So they really take a lot of the guesswork out. Now, when we talk about the kind that most everyone wants, which is the big leaf hydrangea, the purple, pink, blue ones, that's where the confusion really sets in. Because what people don't realize about those is that they actually set their flower buds for the following season, almost as soon as they're done setting, blooming during the current one. So basically that means that there is no time in the entire year, even when they're dormant, that those plants don't have flower buds on them for either the current season or the next season. And basically what that means is that they can't be pruned. Now that makes it sound like they're really super easy and low maintenance, and they are, but the trick here is that those plants really don't look their best in winter. So, when they go dormant and, you're out there cleaning up your yard in fall or even in early spring, you're thinking, wow, look at this. It looks like it's got to be cut back. And they cut them back, and then there go the flowers. Now, here at Spring Meadow in the Proven Winners Color Choice Shrubs line, we've been working really hard at developing varieties that can stand up to these, unintentional mistakes, or stand up to the unpredictable winters that a lot of us have, and certainly here in Michigan. And a great example of that I would encourage you to look at your local garden center, and I've seen them, widespread across the Detroit area, is Let's Dance Can Do Hydrangea. Now, this is you're going to look at it and you'll say, okay, yeah, that's pretty enough. But really, it is so emblematic of the innovation that we put into our flowering shrubs. So what sets Let's Dance Can Do Hydrangea apart from the rest is that the old styles of big leaf hydrangeas just had flower buds at the tippy tops of their stems, the terminal buds. Let's Dance Can Do Hydrangea actually sets flower buds on the entire length of its stem. So basically from its lowest bud closest to the ground all the way to the top. And let me tell you, we have this hydrangea blooming in front of our office right now, and it is stunning. And this is despite, having a really rough winter. Typically here in Grand Haven, we have reliable snow cover, which makes a lot of things come through really well. But we didn't have that consistently this year. And we also had all those crazy freezes in spring, got really warm and then it got super cold. And those are usually, the combination of those two conditions are kind of the death knell, or at least for flowers, for most big leaf hydrangeas. And these things are blooming their head off. So I highly encourage you, if you love that type of hydrangea with the big pink, purple, or blue flowers, and you haven't had success, well, first of all, I can tell you, go to the Proven Winners website, look up Hydrangeas Demystified, and we'll explain it all for you. But also, go to your local garden center, ask for Let's Dance Can Do Hydrangea, and really you will see the difference. It is just incredible. So, I could talk about hydrangeas all day, but we do have, like I said at the beginning, about 350 different varieties of flowering shrubs that are only available in the Proven Winners Color Choice line. So, we sell all of these plants in the white containers. So if you go to your garden center, look for the white containers in the shrub section, you'll find them. We sell a lot of roses, and landscape roses are also blooming their heads off right now, a great time for them. And all of our roses are specifically trialed here in Michigan for disease resistance. So we have a huge R&D facility out here at Spring Meadow. And what we do to trial our roses to make sure that they're actually disease resistant is we put them in the greenhouse, we space them close together, and we overhead water. Now, if you know anything about roses, those are things that just, normally would definitely not do because they would cause disease and cause all these issues. But we actually do that as the first step to try to weed out any individuals that will get disease. So we kind of take a natural selection approach to just getting those plants out of our trials right away. So, it's unfortunate because, that does mean sometimes that a plant with a really beautiful flower or a really unique color might not make it to market. But the important thing is it takes out the ones that get disease resistance. And then once we've sorted those out, then we start looking at, okay, does it rebloom? Is it blooming consistently all through the summer? Because we know that people don't want to be out there fussing over their roses. Some people do, and there's roses out there for them. But we know that, even the most experienced gardener definitely likes to have some plants in their back pocket that don't need a ton of work. And so our Proven Winners Oh So Easy roses, At Last Rose, these are the types that you can grow. You don't have to worry about deadheading or trimming them. They're just going to keep flowering, and they're not going to get, powdery mildew or black spot. Now, unfortunately, we can't do anything about Japanese beetles, and I know they're a growing problem here in Michigan. But one nice thing about our roses, because they are so vigorous, what you can actually do when the Japanese beetles start coming, which is going to be very soon if it hasn't already happened in the Detroit area, just trim them. Take all the flowers off, because it's the flowers that they're the most attractive to. So trim your roses back. The Japanese beetles are like, hey, there's no delicious rose flowers here for me to eat. They move on, and then within 4 to 6 weeks, your rose is going to have fresh flowers, but the Japanese beetles will have moved on. So sometimes, dealing with issues that are like the Japanese beetles, you have to take more of a cultural approach, and really that's what gardening is all about. So we really try to help people understand how they can use our plants to sort of outsmart, problems that they have, and to really make sure that they have, beautiful plants, because that's what we are all about. We want everything, all of the shrubs that we introduce to outperform everything else that's on the market. And we really want people to be happy and have a good experience with our plants.
You make a good point in terms of a disease resistance or disease tolerance, because when it comes down to it, it's not only less work, but it's more sustainable if we're not having to add the chemicals to the plant materials in order to keep them safe. So it seems over the years there's more efforts put into looking at new introductions from a disease standpoint, from an insect standpoint, because again, like you say, it makes gardening a lot more, or I should say, easier and more beneficial.
And more fun, right?
Right.
you want to look at your roses, not be out there trying to coat the undersides of the leaves with some, oil or something on a hot summer day. That's not what's fun.
Right. Stacey, we need to take another short break, so stay tuned for more from Stacey and Spring Meadow Nursery on the PlantMichiganGreen.com Gardening Show on News Talk 760 WJR. Welcome back. We're here with Stacey Hirvela from Spring Meadow Nursery in Grand Haven, Michigan, and have been talking about plants. Okay, Stacey, what else can you share with our listeners?
Well, at the beginning of the hour here, we were talking about Dr. Tom Rainey and innovation in plant breeding. And so I wanted to bring up another of his plants that's just starting to get on the market. Now, I have to preface this by saying, I have been in horticulture for, oh my goodness, like 25 years now. And as I'm sure it's easy to become a little bit jaded. And, I don't think horticulturists ever think that they know it all, but you kind of feel like, I've seen it, yeah, sure, right. And the plant that I want to talk about that has totally changed my mind on that is double play doozy Spirea. So, I think a lot of plant people are like, Spirea, like, what? Are you joking me? That's just like such a workaday plant. Double play doozy came to us from Dr. Tom Rainey, and it is it's actually the only reblooming sterile Japanese Spirea. So basically, we don't have a problem with invasiveness on Spirea here in Michigan, but it is spreading in certain other parts of the country. So there was sort of this invasiveness issue that he wanted to overcome. But when he was developing Double Play Doozy, the seedlessness that he was able to develop resulted in this Spirea that blooms perpetually. Like, you can't even call it a rebloomer because it actually just keeps blooming. And, when I first was learning about this plant, when we introduced it in the catalog, it was like, okay, yeah, sounds pretty good. But we have it in our trial gardens. We have a massive planting of it. And I have to say, it is truly one of the most impressive flowering shrubs I have ever seen in my life. This thing does not stop flowering. And the flowers are a really nice dark pink red. So, goes with just about everything. If you have been, looking at your backyard and thinking like, I really could use some more flowers, but, I don't want something that needs a lot of work, or I just want something that, flowers all the time. Maybe 3 years ago, I would have said, no, there's nothing really that you can expect to flower basically all summer long in terms of shrubs. Double Play Doozy changes all of that. I have to tell you, I am so impressed with this plant. Go to our website. You can look at pictures of it. I think we have some videos on YouTube that we've done recently, because I'm just so excited about this plant's performance and what it means, for homeowners of all skill levels. Again, if you're a talented gardener, it's good to have plants you don't have to worry about. And if you're just getting into it, or you're just looking to do some, small sprucing up around the house, Double Play Doozy is a fantastic choice. Now, I know there's a lot of interest these days in native plants, and we do quite a lot of work with native species. A lot of times when I'm talking about native shrubs, people get a little bit defensive and they say, oh, well, once you start working with or breeding native shrubs, you take out some of the wildlife attraction. Now, in our native shrubs, we don't deal with the flowers at all. So when we're breeding native shrubs, we're not looking for things like double flowers or new flower colors that could potentially confuse pollinators. Our number one goal when we are breeding native shrubs is size, actually. So a lot of fantastic native species out there, they get pretty big and, may not be a suitable scale for your average yard. Sure, if you have, acreage, that's no problem. But if you have a smaller, yard in a suburb or a small town, you might not be able to fit, a 10 by 10 foot button bush in your backyard or a 10 by 10 foot Winterberry Holly. So we really work to kind of select for compactness so that you can actually incorporate these native plants into your yard. So a great example of that is Sugar Shack buttonbush. And buttonbush is a plant that's abundant throughout the state. You go by pretty much any body of water, even in downtown Grand Rapids on the riverbanks, you'll find it. And it has these really cool round flowers, perfectly spherical with these anthers sticking all out around them. People see those flowers, they go crazy. They have to have it for themselves. So Sugar Shack is a, 5 by 5 foot version of that you can actually use in your landscape. Attracts a ton of pollinators, deliciously fragrant. Just a really, really cool, nice plant. And I also wanted to talk about Fisocarpus, or nine bark, because this is such a popular landscape plant because it is also basically no maintenance. We actually don't recommend pruning nine bark at all because it can be pruned and it will recover just fine, but it kind of interferes with its naturally elegant habit. So a really great choice if you can plant it in full sun, because that's what it likes, and leave it alone, you will have such a beautiful display. Now, my favorite of the nine barks that we offer here through the Proven Winners Color Choice line is Ginger Wine. And this plant is in my garden right now, and I was actually just looking at it on Monday. It was a warm day, it was sunny, and the plant is just sparkling. So the foliage kind of turns this dark red as it matures, but when it emerges, it's just this glowing sort of amber, orangey red color. I mean, it is just extraordinary. I just love it, and it goes so well with everything, especially I think if people feel like, oh, I'm not a landscape designer, I don't know a lot about plants, or I don't know about putting colors together. You really can't go wrong with some nine barks and some evergreens. It's just going to create a nice, quiet look for your landscape.
Recently, I came across some Festivus Gold, and they were glowing in the landscape. It a really nice shape, really nice size, and the seed heads, the red seed heads against the yellow flowers, really looked good.
Yeah, it's, so there are yellow and purple and red nine barks. So whatever your color, fancy is, you will find the right one. And Festivus Gold that you mentioned, that's a great choice because that's a nice compact variety. Some nine barks do get quite large, so they need some space. But we do have a number of compact varieties as well because that's, again, that's what we want to create. Problem-solving plants that people can actually use in their yards, incorporate into their lives. And, I think our goal is that people experience some of that magic that professionals feel and what drew us to, going into horticulture in the first place.
The thing that's interesting about nine bark, you can find it down in St. Joe and you can find it up in the UP, and it grows in diverse soil types as well. So it's kind of one of those bulletproof plants. But the thing that I find most interesting is that the diversity that you've developed in sizes, in foliage colors, and it still has that versatility in terms of to be able to be used in a lot of different situations.
Yeah, actually most of the nine barks that we offer in the Proven Winners line were actually selected from Michigan genetics. So, most of our, Dale, the owner of the nursery, is a big hunter. Tim, my boss and new plant development manager, is a big fisherman. So they see something interesting while they're out in the woods. They collect it, bring it back. And so there is a lot of Michigan heritage built into a number of our plants and certainly into the nine barks.
Yeah, in the Winterberry Holly as well, when you have some of those, and everybody, well, they think about it as Michigan Holly, Winterberry Holly, depending on the common name. But those red berries that you see in the winter landscape against the snow and in frozen lakes and things, there's quite a bit of Michigan genetics in your winterberries as well.
Oh, 100%. And, our Winterberry Hollies are a segment that is really, really growing. A lot of people think like, oh, why would I want a holly that loses its leaves in the winter? But once they see the Winterberry just absolutely laden with berries, they kind of can't resist them. And yeah, we have a strong Michigan connection with all of our Winterberry Hollies. But the one that I specifically want to mention is Berry Heavy Gold. And this is an absolutely stunning variety with yellow berries. And it's not just like a kind of sulfur yellow. It's a beautiful, deep yellow, really, really nice for holiday decorating. And that is a plant that was developed and selected by the late Fred Case, who was a very well-known plantsman around the Saginaw area. And he's the one who actually gave us that plant. And we're very pleased to honor his legacy by continuing to offer it. But whether you choose red or yellow or both, the Berry Heavy series is a great choice. And we also have the Berry Poppins series. So again, going back to what we were saying about space, the Berry Poppins series is about half the size of the wilder types and of the Berry Heavy. So if you're short on space, they are a great choice. You can do a low hedge. If you have a wildlife garden, they're really just very versatile. So, instead of relegating things, again to the back 40 because they're just so big, these are plants that you can actually work into your gardens and landscape and enjoy every day.
Oh, one thing we'll mention at the Winterberry Holly, they're dioecious plant, and so they need male and female plants in order to flower and fruit. And
That is correct, yeah.
For every female cultivar that you find, there's usually a male pollinator. And so most times we recommend that if you're going to get a group of them, buy a male pollinator as well, put it someplace in the landscape where it's not in full view, because it's obviously not going to have berries, and then you'll get the full berry effect on your female cultivars.
We also recommend one male for every 5 females. So a lot of people don't know how many males to pick for the females. So we say a 1-to-5 ratio ought to give you a good berry set.
Great. Stacey, how can people get more information about the Spring Meadow, the color choice, and proven winter plants that you offer?
Right. Well, the best place to start if you're a home gardener is going to be provenwinnerscolorchoice.com. That's our website. What you're going to find there is descriptions of all of the plants I've just talked about, as well as our Gardening Simplified Landscape Guide, which is a 100-page magazine that you can look through to find landscaping ideas. And if you are a wholesale grower or are interested in doing business with Spring Meadow on the wholesale side, visit springmeadownursery.com. And even if you're just interested in the nursery industry, take a look at that page. You'll see some of the investments that we've made in automation and innovation. And, we're really just very proud of the nursery here and, love being a part of the Michigan horticulture and agriculture scene. And I think that whichever of our sites you visit, that will come through.
Great. Well, thanks very much for being with us today and sharing all of your information. And maybe you can come back sometime in the future.
I would love to. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Stay tuned for more with a PlantMichiganGreen.com gardening show on News Talk 760 WJR.
Now back to more gardening with your host, Dr. Bob Schutzke, on the PlantMichiganGreen.com gardening show. Here's Dr. Bob.
Welcome back. We just had a great conversation with Stacey Hirvela from Spring Meadow Nursery. I'd like to also add a few other plants that we were able to talk about with Stacey, because these plants are truly interesting, valuable, and they add a kind of a spark to your garden. And one of those plants, it's one of my favorites, is Abelia Mosconensis Sweet Emotion. It's Sweet Emotions Fragrant Abelia. It's a medium to large shrub, 5 to 6 feet in height and 5 to 6 feet in width. It has scented white pink flowers in spring and an orange-red fall color. This plant is so fragrant, it'll just knock your socks off. And I planted Abelia close to a kitchen window in my previous house, and it was just amazing. Anytime when it was in bloom and the kitchen window was open, the fragrance came in and really was out of this world. So Abelia Mosconensis Sweet Emotions, and it was developed by Spring Meadow Color Choice Proven Winners. Another thing that they developed, here's another native that they've put a lot of work into, and it's Aronia melanocarpa, and it's the black chokeberry. Black chokeberry is a Michigan native, and they've developed what they call is the low-scape group. And as Stacey mentioned, there's a lot of interest in the natives in looking for more compact, manageable plants. And so low-scape hedger gets to be about 3 to 5 feet. Low-scape mound is 1 to 2 feet. And they also have one that's a ground cover called groundhog. These are compact plants, and they're adaptable to diverse soils, because you'll find black chokeberry on heavy clay soils. You'll find it on sandy soils. From an ornamental standpoint, they have glossy dark green leaves, white flowers, purple to black fruit as it matures, and bright red fall color. And the birds love the fruit. So the Aronia melanocarpa, the black chokeberry low-scape group, is something we're considering. Another one, she mentioned sugar shack, Cephalanthus occidentalis, and buttonbush. Those flowers, when they're out in the summer, they look like ping pong balls, and they're beautiful. And again, it's a very versatile plant when it comes to soils, heavy soils, wet soils, and even some soils on the little dry side. The last group that I want to talk about for you is Daravilla. Daravilla is the dwarf bush honeysuckle. It is not a honeysuckle. I don't know how it got its name, bush honeysuckle, but Daravilla, Lanicera, sessilifolia, and the Kodak series. Daravilla lanicera is a Michigan native. And so if you look at these Daravilla, there's a whole bunch of them that are out on the marketplace. And so it is great to have Spring Meadow in Michigan. They've contributed an awful lot to the horticulture arena. And again, it's always pleasant to deal with them. So don't forget to visit our website, plantmichigangreen.com, and click on Ask the Expert to submit your landscape and gardening questions. You may hear your questions on the air. And remember to tune in every Saturday at 4 p.m. through August for the best information and advice to maximize your outdoor living experience. During the week, log on to plantmichigangreen.com, your landscaping and horticulture resource, to find a professional, a retail garden center, pose your gardening questions, or explore rewarding careers in the green industry. That's all for this week. I'm Dr. Bob, wishing you sunshine and happy gardening. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll talk again.
You've been listening to the PlantMichiganGreen.com Gardening Show with Dr. Bob Schutzke, presented by the Michigan Nursery and Landscape Association.